Da li je slučajno ili koordinirano da u ova 2 dana u Sarajevu zajedno budu oba najvažnija faktora, najbitnija za našu zemlju, Amerika i NATO, O'Brien i Geoana. Mircea Geoana je drugi čovjek NATO saveza, odmah iza Stoltenberga. Ovo je njegov drugi ekskluzivni intervju za Face. Malo minuta, onako vojnički nam je dodijeljeno, 10, ali i čast za Face. No nama dovoljno da mu postavimo ključna pitanja. Citati iz prvog intervjua Mircea Geoane Face-u. Sve što BiH zatraži, uradit ćemo. Rusija je slaba, nema vremena za rat u BiH. BiH je važan partner NATO-a. Na pragu je NATO-a i Evropske unije. Da čujemo što kaže u drugom intervjuu.
You know, in Romania, before you have this thing, during the last years of communism, there were only 2 hours of TV per day. And everything was propaganda. You couldn't breathe. 2 hours, starting with Ceausescu, ending with Ceausescu, and Ceausescu in between. So what could the people of Romania do? We are watching TV from our neighbors. So Bucharest in the south, we watch Bulgarian TV. Narushenia, Jol Carton, the whole thing. The guys from the west, from Craiova, Timișoara, that part, they're all watching Yugoslav TV. And everybody now, and Hungarian TV in Transylvania. So now Romania is a country that I know words from all these languages just because we are watching. There was a game between, in Bulgarian, it was Liverpool playing, and said, 0-0, Niama calificația Liverpoola. I speak Bulgarian, you see? Okay. Lekanoș de țar, there's something, because from Bucharest So it's better in NATO and EU. I tell you from the beginning, but let's do the interview. Thank you for being here.
Dear Deputy Secretary General, thank you for giving us this opportunity for the interview. So one could say that Bosnia and Herzegovina is a complicated country. We have one entity which doesn't want to join NATO, while on the other hand, we have another entity that wishes to join NATO. The question is, does NATO want Bosnia and Herzegovina to join?
Listen, since we founded this organization back in 1949, 75 years ago, part of the Washington Treaty, which is our fundamental document, the open door policy is part of who we are. So every nation in Europe that wishes and is ready to join the alliance, open door policy works. And I need to tell you that how many new allies we have since the fall of communism. Many, including from the Western Balkans, including from the region. The newest arrivals in NATO are Sweden and Finland. And why they decided to join NATO? Not because NATO went and made a pitch for them to join, just because they've seen Russia so aggressive, and they decided that neutrality is not good enough for them anymore. They wanted the big shield that NATO represents and Article 5 represents for 1 billion people and more than 50% of global GDP and military might in the world. So that's why nations want to join NATO. NATO will never say to one partner of ours, join. This is not the way we operate. So in the case of Bosnia and Herzegovina, if you decide that you want to join NATO and you're ready to join NATO and allies are ready to accept Bosnia, one day your country will become a member of NATO. You decide you don't, you won't. The same thing with the European Union. Nobody's forcing anyone to get into the EU. I'm a little bit experienced in life, and one of the proudest moments of my life, other than when the kids were born and personal things, is when I raised the flag of my country to become a new member of NATO 20 years ago as foreign minister, and when I closed the negotiations of my country joining the EU, also as a foreign minister, with this very hand of mine. It's up to you. If you decide that you want to be with us and you work hard for reforms and doing these things, you'll be part of this organization. You decide you want a different path, it's your decision. NATO will never come and force you to join. We say that open door policy is part of what NATO represents. And look at Ukraine. Before the illegal occupation of Crimea in 2014, some 20-something% of Ukrainians said that they want to join NATO. After the occupation of Crimea and after the bloody war, now 92% of Ukrainians say they want to join NATO. Why? Because it offers stability, which is the foundation of prosperity, democracy, and rule of law. That's who we are. It's up to you to decide if you want to be part of our family. I would be personally very happy to welcome your country as a new member if you decide this is your way and if we decide that you're ready to join.
Arguably, we could say that then Ukraine tried to join NATO too late. Is there any chance for a shortened procedure for the admission of Bosnia and Herzegovina to NATO so that the similar situation does not happen to us?
Of course, there are preconditions for a country to join the organization, our organization, to join NATO. And of course, geopolitical circumstances could accelerate or not. Look, when it came to the decision in the summit of NATO in Bucharest 2008, and there was a decision about Ukraine, about Georgia, about Bosnia, about Macedonia, before becoming non-Macedonia. We had for the previous enlargements what we call a membership action plan, which was a sort of a period where a candidate for joining NATO was supposed to deliver some of the reforms in an action plan before becoming a member. We decided in the summit of NATO in Vilnius to eliminate the map requirement for Ukraine. Why? Because they're already quite interoperable with NATO. So we simplified the procedure. Finland and Sweden entered with no map. So yes, we are flexible in terms of doing things, but we are not flexible or want the fundamental precondition. A new member should be a democracy, should be rule of law, corruption has to be tackled effectively, and the armed forces, of course, need to be prepared to be part of this alliance of ours. So, again, the ball is in your court. We are ready to go as far as you want to go.
NATO has recently expressed its concerns concerning separatist rhetorics in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Does NATO or do you have any information about possible instability or external malicious threats posed to the region of the Balkans and Bosnia and Herzegovina?
These statements are counterproductive. Malign influence from the outside, there is. That's self-evident, and if people don't recognize that, that's a political thing. But also at the same time, we don't see and we don't anticipate significant instability in your country or in the region. And in a way, the fact that NATO is here together in HQ Sarajevo, helping EUFOR Althea, or in Kosovo with KFOR, we're also part of this stability. We have an interest in the stability of the region. So while all these statements and malign influence from the outside, which does exist, is counterproductive, and we, of course, we condemn that. At the same time, we are here to say that there is stability, and we don't see imminent risks for unraveling of the situation in the region.
What would NATO do in the situation that Milorad Dodik starts a secession from Bosnia and Herzegovina, the separation of the entity from the country?
I'm usually not commenting on counterfactual propositions, but I would say one thing: this would be a dead end. There's no way in that direction that will serve in any way the interest of all the citizens of Bosnia. So this is something that we strongly discourage, and we believe that it's more of a political, temptation to play with this topic.
Would you say right now that Bosnia is on a path of cooperation with NATO or on a path of joining the NATO eventually? So, for example, is there any difference between the route that we are currently having between Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia, for example?
No, look at the volume of programs we're doing together. We do a lot together. And again, the political track and the practical track, they reinforce each other. So the political track, which could eventually lead to a closer relationship between your country and NATO, are not separate from the practical cooperation. Because what we do, we are strengthening your armed forces, your national security institutions, the resilience of your society. We are building integrity in your armed forces. So what we do is transforming the reality in your country in such a way that when and if there will be political conditions met for you to go faster on the political side. So we don't see two tracks, political and practical, And I would say that I'm not making comparisons. Look at Georgia across the Black Sea. Until the war in Ukraine started, they were the most advanced of our partners. A huge volume of programs together. So the visit of the North Atlantic Council in your country for these last 2 days, was also an indication of the interest of your country to doing more with us in practical ways, and why not in political ways. So we'll continue to respond to those requests.
And now, in a more geopolitical context, we have the war in Ukraine, we have the crisis in the Middle East, and some are even announcing a third world war. We have also NATO officials warning citizens to be prepared. Is there a chance for a larger scale war of happening?
You know, NATO is exactly the kind of institution to prevent these things from happening. We are a massive organization. Massive organization. We have a lot of influence, a lot of resources. And the number one goal of NATO is to make sure that war does not erupt. That's why on NATO soil, we never had war on NATO soil since 75 years ago. And in a way, we play a regional, transatlantic, but also global role of stabilizing issues. We have to recognize that the world is more unstable and more dangerous than before. We see a combination of factors like great power competition. We see, economic and security risks growing. We see technology changing so many things. We see climate change creating security problems too. We see a competition in multiple ways. We see the rise of regional powers in a way that things are looking like. But I believe there is enough wisdom and enough prudence in the bigger or smaller capitals around the world to avoid such a dramatic outcome. So I want people to know that NATO is here to basically do whatever it takes for peace. We are a peace-loving organization, and the fact that we are a political military organization is a reflection of the fact that the world is a complicated place. So I think it's not only the NATO countries or our partners needing NATO, but I think the world needs NATO because we bring stability and predictability in world affairs. That's what we are. And I know that in Washington in July, when we'll be having the summit of our organization, 75 years since we started this beautiful journey, this will be reconfirmed. And I hope also to see many of our partners. NATO has 36 nations partners around the world. We have superb partnerships with the European Union and other organizations. So I want people to know, again, sometimes propaganda, that NATO is basically one of the best insurance policies for dramatic situations not to happen in the world. And I want people to trust NATO that we are doing our job.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary General.